Locked On Liars edition of Locked On Badgers. I was wrong.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. To all the everydayers that are here every single day, thank you so much for being part of this. Y'all are amazing. To everyone else listening, thank you so much for being part of this. Whether you're in the car listening, on the way to work, at work, whatever it is, I appreciate you. Today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com, use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. And let's just talk about it, man. Let's do some Locked On Liars, which is a term we use on this show if you haven't been here, when I get bad takes, when I get my takes wrong. We're going to do some of the things that I think I was wrong about and some of the things I think I was right about. And let's start with the wrong ones. It's always important, man, to own your receipts. Otherwise, what's the point of making takes? Let's start with the first one. Ryan was wrong. Elijah Hills. My goodness. I got to be honest, man. Based on what we saw people talk about in spring, where it didn't feel like he was getting a lot of reps, and kind of based on what I was seeing in Platteville when I was there, I thought it was a depth piece. Like, I thought Hills would come in and provide some depth and some rotational minutes, but I thought Brandon Lane would be the guy who would be the transfer that make the biggest impact this year. Lane was getting more reps than him, and I was like, I don't know with Hills, man. He looks a little small. Mr. Hills, my apologies. I am sorry. Because all Hills has done is come in and be the most explosive part of that front seven. He's looked great, and he has 2 sacks on the season, but it's not coverage sacks. It's not whoopsie sacks. It's not blocking assignment sacks. He's just whipped a couple people and looked quick and explosive doing it from the interior of the defensive line, which is the toughest spot to get that pressure from. If you have interior defense linemen that can collapse pockets or create pressure, that's a nightmare for offenses. Hills has been the best guy on our front in doing this. He's got 2 sacks on the season. That's tied for 5th in the Big Ten. Early season, right? But that's tied for 5th in the Big Ten. Only one guy has 3 in the conference. So Hills is on pace to do great work. And, he's got 3 tackles for losses. When you look at the team as a whole has 4 sacks. Elijah Hills has 2 of them. The team has 7 TFLs. Elijah Hills has 3 of them. The other parts of that front seven need to come along for the ride, because right now it's Elijah Hills is really providing the juice there, and I didn't see it. I didn't see that happening. Yeah, and I'm glad it is. Like, the team needs it, needs more of it. Right now, he's kind of 3rd in that defense line rotation. He's not getting the minutes Neal is. He's not getting the snaps that Barton is. I think you're going to start seeing some of that level out, and I think he's going to continue to get more snaps, because if he's getting pressure like this, you can't keep him off the field. On the rush defense, I think there's still moments where he gets bullied around a little bit, which should be expected coming from the FCS level. He's not the biggest guy, but that's okay if you're getting a sack a game, right? You're really doing yeoman's work in there. So I was definitely wrong in Elijah Hills. Curious to see how that continues to go. He's the highest pass rush per PFF grade on the entire team, linebacker, edge, or interior defensive lineman. He's got the highest grade there, which matches the eye test, right? That's one of those spots where the analytics or the numbers are, the analysis also is backed up by what you're seeing on the field. Elijah Hills, I was wrong. Chez Mellusi, I was wrong. And I want to be careful with how I say this, because I'm a huge Chez fan. I respect the hell out of anybody who fights back from a bunch of injuries, who stays the course, who fights and battles. You hear coaches talk about him, players talk about him. Very popular guy in the locker room. And I still think there's absolutely a role on this team for Chez Mellusi, 100%. So don't misconstrue it. He's got 3 touchdowns. He's run really hard. I like him actually near the red zone, because he has pretty good vision. He runs with toughness. He runs with some power. Had a really nice touchdown week 1 against Western Michigan. But ultimately, 3.8 yards per carry, man, it's not efficient enough. It's just not. And you can cheer for a guy all you want, but this football is a production business. Sports are a production business. If you're gaining 3.8 per carry, that's not. I mean, it's trying to win by hitting a bunch of singles in baseball. Eventually, you hit into a double play. It doesn't work. You gotta be more efficient offensively. You just have to be. And if you look at in the Big Ten, if you look at other running backs, There's nobody else in the conference averaging under 4 yards per carry that gets the amount of workload that Chez Mellusi does. The closest guy is over at Maryland. He's at 26 carries. That's Roman Hemby. Chez has got 35 carries at 3.83 yards per carry against two defenses that, quite frankly, aren't near the top of what we're going to see in the Big Ten. I feel like he's been a little impatient, maybe a little lacking a little bit of the burst that we saw pre-injury. It just hasn't fully been there. And you can't keep riding it at that level if it's not going to be more efficient. Because that's just ultimately it's just inefficient offense. And inefficient offense is going to hurt you this season. Like it's going to make it more difficult. So again, I think the reps are there for him. I don't think he needs to like stop playing at all, but I think the workload distribution needs to even out a little bit. Now, Tywee wasn't here this game, but Cade, the freshman, I think you have to start spreading that out a little bit because twofold, right? A, I would like to see Chez Mellusi stay healthy. There's no reason to ride him quite as heavily when he's had an injury history and you have depth in the backfield. But again, B, ultimately, nobody would be having this conversation if he was averaging 4.5 yards per carry or 5 yards per carry or 5.12 yards per carry, whatever it is. Nobody would be saying, oh, you're giving him too many carries if he was being more efficient and more successful in those reps. And it's not all on him. There's run block stuff too, but it's not working, right? Through 2 games, I expected it to look a little better. Cade Yacamelli, another one. Ryan was wrong. I did a show before the season. I was trying to figure out the running back depth chart and just how they're going to split these reps up. And I thought, man, I know you're going to have a role for Chez and Tywee. Obviously, that's been true. I said Akers going to be on the field for some reps, not a ton, but he's going to have a role. And then I was like, you got to get those freshman reps. I just don't know where that leaves Cade Yacamelli. I think he might fall out of the rotation. And I know there were some really sharp commenters who told me, they're like, dude, don't sleep on Yak. And I like Yak. I've consistently said I like the athletic body there. I just didn't know where he would be in the rotation. And I thought there was a chance he would just fall out of it. I am sorry, Mr. Yacamelli, because that is definitely not the case. And I don't want to make, like, we're 2 games in, right? He had a great game against South Dakota. But I think the more telling thing is week 1, he was in on that first drive against Western Michigan. Like, this coaching staff really likes him. They like what he has there. I was wrong. I didn't see this type of role for him early on. And even if you had told me Tywee would get hurt, I wouldn't have said I see this type of role for Cade Yacamelli as like the number 2 back. And now you're in a spot where you're like, gosh, I think he might need even more. Now, I do think he has hit a couple long runs that have been blocked up really well. And you're not, in other words, you're not going to get a running back the rest of the season that's averaging 9 yards per carry. Okay, right. Like that's not Cade Yacamelli, but I think he's been really decisive. I think he's hit the holes hard. Yeah, like Cade Yacamelli has definitely exceeded expectations. My last one is Tyler Van Dyke. This one is super interesting to me because I feel like I was right and wrong on Van Dyke. I'm going to get into the right part later because this is the Locked On Liars portion of this show. I thought, man, you put Van Dyke in, and what you're getting is more high variance. You're going to get more deep shots, more deep passes, but a few more interceptions. And it's like we got the inverse, right? We've got like game manager Van Dyke, and that has not been the rep whatsoever on him anywhere. The rep has been he's going to take a lot of deep shots. He's too antsy not to, but he's going to throw some picks. He has no picks. Now, he definitely could have had one, but so far he hasn't turned it over through the air. But he hasn't taken deep shots either, right? He's at 6.4 yards per attempt. That's 15th in the Big Ten. So it's like we got this version of Van Dyke who's not taking deep shots, but not throwing picks, which is literally the opposite of what Miami fans said you're going to get with Van Dyke. They said you're going to get some deep shots, but some picks. So it's interesting. I thought we would open it up more with Van Dyke. I really did. And I thought that just meant more 50-50 balls. Like, I don't care how you scheme it up. You still got to take some shots 50-50 down the field, and we just haven't. And I thought we would. I thought we'd take more of those, and I was wrong on that. All right, we're going to take a quick break there. We're going to come back with some of the things I was right on with Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy is awesome. Again, I've talked about it all the time. I can't give you more days, but maybe we can make it a little easier for you to get more done in the days that you have. That's what 5 Hour Energy is there for. 0 sugar, convenient, portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. On the site, you even have the option. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, you can build a 12-pack or a 24-pack. You choose all the different flavors. They have a bunch of them, right? All the different flavors you want, and it's delivered right to your door. Get a little more done. No sugar, easy to consume, great flavors. 5hourenergy.com. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th. and cannot be used with any other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Get a little more energy into your day. Let's get back into the show and talk about some of the good takes we had here. This is the Ryan is right, Ryan is wrong show. And of course, we're definitely going to lead with the Ryan was wrong, locked on liars. All right, let's get into some of the stuff where I think I was right. And again, this is early season stuff. And in the comments, let me know the takes that you think you're most wrong on and the takes you think you're most right on. We'll put them up in the show. We'll talk about it. That stuff's always fun. Where I think I was right, Xavier Lucas. And this isn't short-term right. I mean long-term right. If you go back to when we started recruiting him, if you go back to when we landed him, before any of these track times came out, I had Xavier Lucas ranked second in that class for us. We do our personal ratings and we do a show on it. And I only had Mabry Mettoyer ahead of him, partially because Mettoyer is a quarterback and that the importance of that position is just so immense. But I had Lucas at number 2. As soon as I saw him play and I talked to his dad and I talked to a coach down, I'm like, this dude is so good. He's going to be great for the Badgers. And then time goes on, the track times come out, more and more people start talking about it. It becomes in fuego to talk about Xavier Lucas and the upside. People are doing podcasts. We were way ahead of that game. This dude is going to be so good. And he already is. And what'd you see in the game on Saturday? We saw him start to take reps from Fort Greene, right? Start to be kind of in that starting role. Obviously got banged up a little bit, slipped on some concrete out at the back of the end zone. But yeah, there's a lot of upside there. And it's very cool that we're already seeing that upside kind of materialize onto the field. So definitely right there. The other one I think another one we were right on is the running back depth. We talked about that. I did a show that said, I think this could be the deepest, not best, deepest running back room Wisconsin has had in a long, long time. One weekend, you're going to lose players, right? It's football. You're going to lose and running backs for sure. You're going to get guys dinged up. So that depth is so important. One game in, we already down Tywee. And what did you see? You saw Cade Yacamelli, who some people, myself included, had already kind of started to write off in terms of where they're going to fit in this depth chart. Not in terms of him, but in terms of where he would fit. He came out on average 9 yards per carry, right? You still got Chez running hard. Oh, by the way, let's put 2 different freshmen in who both looked the part. You wouldn't be worried at all. I wouldn't be worried at all if someone told me, hey, we lost another guy. We need Darian Dupree to be kind of the number 2 today, or we need Dylan Jones to be the number 2 today. Not ideal, but I'm not going to freak out about that. And then you still have Jackson Aker, who's out there getting reps, leading the way. He can be some short yardage stuff, and we know he can catch the ball, caught a bunch of passes last year. Again, that depth is so evident in that room. You could lose a couple guys and still feel pretty solid about it. And Tywee should be back. Chez is healthy. We saw some like we talked about, some great work from Cade Yacamelli. The freshmen got their feet wet. That room is loaded. That's why they've played around with the inverted wishbone. That's why they've been trying to get these guys onto the field in different situations. Yeah, I think that was an easy call, but it looks like that is correct. And even more so now that Cade seems to have taken another step. Another one right, and I hate being right about this one. I talked about it a lot. I talked about it enough. I feel like some people were starting to really hit me on it. Our defense line's just not quite there. And you look at the rush defense, that starts up front. And I know there's been a ton of discussion, both in our Discord, on the show, in other places about, do you play the 2-4-5? Do you play the 3-3-5? Ultimately, you need better defense linemen to play either. And sometimes it's just more depth too. I'm the last thing I'm trying to do is throw anybody under the bus, but Wisconsin right now is giving up 3.98 yards per carry this season through 2 games. And again, those 2 games we all know, it's Western Michigan and South Dakota. Western Michigan could be an all right MAC team. South Dakota is a really good FCS team. On the horizon, sailing towards the good ship, Camp Randall, you have the Alabama Crimson Tide. You have Oregon. You have Penn State with their 2 really good running backs. You have very good teams. Iowa's looked pretty good on the ground as well with Keldon Johnson. So you have better rushing attacks coming, and Wisconsin is giving up 3.98 yards per carry this year. That's 14th in the conference. If you just wanted to be middle of the pack, you have to give up 2.81. So they've been getting gashed. I think the defense line's been getting washed out a little bit. We hit on Elijah Hills, who has looked really good from a disruption standpoint, but they've had struggles against zone blocking concepts, right, where the offensive line just kind of washes them out, and the running back is able to press the cutback lane. Linebackers haven't been good enough in run fits. We've talked about that in previous shows, but it would be a lot easier if we could just stack up on the defense line a little bit better and not allow offensive linemen to create those cutback lanes quite as easily. So I hate being right about that one. And I think I am, sadly. There's still time, but I don't know how you start to look better when you start playing even better offensive lines, right? I don't think you're going to look more stout playing Alabama than you did against South Dakota. That doesn't seem to make sense in my head. I mean, I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I think there are some things here that can happen, right? I think Elijah Hills is a guy who can play a little bit more. I think Brandon Lane can get some more reps. I would like to see more from him. He's just a bigger bodied guy. Dylan Johnson is going to, as the season goes on, you would think, get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more, as a true freshman, a little bit more involved in the game plan. I can absolutely see that happening. So there's some things you could look at and say, well, maybe if X, Y, and Z happens over the course of the year, this will get a little bit better. But you also, I don't know, man. You got to stay healthy too. That's tough to do on the line. You've already lost James Thompson Jr. Yeah, that's a bummer. The other one I think that we talked about that I think goes right on the mixing and matching at linebacker. It's gonna take a little bit of time. Like the individual pieces, I think right now, I think the linebacking core, the individual pieces are kind of better than the cohesive unit right now. Jaheim Thomas is a legit guy. Like he was really good in the SEC. I think John Pius is a legit guy. I think Leon Lowry was a really solid starter at Syracuse. I like the athleticism that Chaney has shown. I'm not ready to give up on that. I know some people have been frustrated with him. I love Allegro. I like Tackett Curtis, what we saw last week. But it feels like they're still searching a little bit for the best combinations and the best situations to put their individual chess pieces. Again, and I talked about this before the season. I said, these pieces might take a little bit of time to gel, not just from the players understanding the scheme, but also from the coaches understanding the right rotations, right? Because you got to see how some of these players react. How does a John Pius react in his first D1 reps? How does Chaney react now that he came into the season a little leaner, a little faster? What does Jaheim Thomas look like in the Big Ten? What does Leon Lowry look like out of Syracuse? And it feels like they're still searching a little bit there. So I think we're right on that one. The other one, and a lot of people talked about this one, but I think the secondary early returns back up some of the confidence. Again, it's all of this is judged through the lens of who they've played, but who they've played have said, we're going to run the ball, we're not going to throw. And secondary hasn't given up a passing touchdown through 2 games. They have given up not a ton of deep plays. They have an interception. They've tackled well. 4 of the top 7 defenders on the Badgers team per PFF are defensive backs. It's Wohler, Lofi, Forkerin, and Xavier Lucas, who hasn't played a lot but is graded out really highly. I think the secondary, based on what we had thought and what we talked about, is kind of in that realm. I think they played very well so far. So that's kind of the Ryan was wrong, Ryan was right. Let me know in the comments takes that you had that you think you either absolutely nailed or that you would like to take a giant eraser to. But we're gonna move on from that. Sorry, I just had to cough for a second. We're going to move on from that, get into the next part of the show, early season surprises. What are some other things that have, through 2 games, just kind of surprised me, things I didn't see coming? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Ibotta. Listen, we all buy stuff. I buy stuff. You buy stuff. If you're going to buy things, why not get some money back? That's what Ibotta is here for. They're going to give you cash back on all the stuff you already buy in your normal everyday life. The average Ibotta user gets $256 back a year for just doing the same things you always do. Just cash to keep living your normal life. Like you're not going to beat that. And $256 is not nothing. That's several tanks of gas. That's a couple unbelievable meals out. That's a movie night. That's a signed Jonathan Taylor framed up Badgers jersey. Like that's real cash. All you got to do is you're going to go over to Ibotta, download the app, sign up with Locked On College. That's a promo code Locked On College. And once you do that, you're going to get $5 off or $5 for free just for trying it from Ibotta by using the code Locked On College. When you register, it is free. You start earning cash on all the things you normally do anyway. Use code Locked On College. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code Locked On College. All right, let's get back to the show. Let's talk some other things that surprised us, that have surprised me, you. Put it in the comments, things that have surprised you this year. The first one I want to go with was I think it's the kicking game, right? We talked about some of the other pros and cons, but like you think back to last year, Bertram's wasn't really solid. We stopped kind of trusting Bakos from really 45 and on. Like it just felt like that wasn't an area that we were going to be confident in. Last week, Bakos nailed a 51-yarder, 52-yarder, whatever it was. That's huge. Like that is absolutely huge. If we have the ability to game plan around that's our field goal range. I always talk about this. Long field goals are great, but what long field goals really do is it allows you to play call differently when you get to like the 35, when you get to like the 34. If you know you have a kicker who in your back pocket you feel comfortable with from 50, then you get into kind of a different mindset offensively. Then you can be a little more aggressive to try to get the first down and not just play for a little better field position to get the field goal. You don't have to be in that no man's zone where you're punting from the 37 or the 36, where you're really not gaining a lot of field position. Having range is just a game changer. And if Vakos can continue to do that, and I think he's got the leg to do it. We saw it his first year at Ohio. That's huge. Speaking of the kickoff game, the kickoffs unit has looked great, right? Because we just don't kick it out of bounds and we kick it into the end zone. So you're eliminating the ability for a team to generate explosive plays in the special teams, the kickoff returns. You're also getting rid of that absolute nonsense kick it out of bounds from last year. And then punting, again, let's tie this all together. Like we've been a little critical of special teams. So a couple a muff punt, a drop field, or drop kickoff return. But Bertram's looked great so far. Last year, Bertram's averaged 41.3 yards per punt. He's up to 47.5 this year. Like that's flipping field position. 47.5 is a great number. And if he can stay in that range, he's added 5-6 yards per punt. That's field position, that's pinning teams, and then that changes the way they game plan, right? If they know they're stuck at the 5 or the 10 instead of the 20, now they have to be more conservative, which plays into a defense that maybe can take advantage of that. I think the kicking game as a whole, I know you had that early miss from Vakos, which I just think it's like first kick of the year, it is what it is. He looked great on that 51-yarder. And if he's legit locked in and you have a much better punting unit and you're kicking the ball out of bounds on the kickoff units, kicking game looks potentially really solid. I would say that was a bit of surprise coming off of last year. The other surprise to me would be the inability of the Badgers to gash more in the running game. I thought they'd be able to sauce up some longer runs just because because we saw it in Platteville. We saw some longer runs where you're playing kind of two outmatched teams, the veteran offensive line, which I still think is pretty good. I just thought we would gash a little bit more, and we've struggled creating those explosive running plays, and that was always a staple of Wisconsin. I know that's something Longo wants to do. It gets hard when it's just a bunch of 4, 5, 2, 8, 4, 4, 3, 8, 6, 4, 2, 2, 1, 4 type runs. Like it's hard to sustain that. There needs to be some more explosives, and I thought we would get that more in the first 2 weeks. The other one I talked about, the other big surprise was just bringing in a big, strong arm quarterback and then seemingly not playing to those strengths as much as you or I thought we would. To me, that's a surprise. It feels like a game plan more geared to a Braden Locke, a game plan more geared towards a quick decision maker without the elite arm strength. And I don't know. I'm very interested to see what comes when Alabama, because if there's any vestige, if there's any remaining, we were saving a few things, that's out the door now, right? The Crimson Tide are coming. So there's no more we're saving something because of what's coming up on the schedule, or we're keeping a few things locked away in Uncle Longo's toy chest. There's no more of that because you can't afford it. So whatever else you got cooking up, we have to see some deep shots. And by the way, it gets even more important when you play Bama, when you play a USC. You got to be able to take some shots. You cannot let them play 10 in the box and just keep everything, in a closet. You cannot do that with Alabama because they're gonna annihilate you. You have to make them respect your deep pass a little bit. You have to make them respect some explosive plays. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get anything going on the ground. And you're not going to dink and dunk Alabama. You're not going to go 5 yards, 7 yards down the field against Alabama, against USC. Maybe you will against USC. Although USC looks a little better this year too, defensively. But you're definitely not going to do it against elite defenses. You have to hit some chunk plays. So if there's something hidden that they haven't broke out, it's been a surprise to me, both running the ball and passing the ball, that they have not found some more explosive plays for the first 2 weeks. Anyway, let me know what your surprises are. Let me know what your good takes are, your bad takes, all of that. Locked On Badgers, really do appreciate every single person listening to this show. When you're done here, go check out Locked On College Football, 24/7 stream, all the latest college football news from every major conference, every major story. Locked On College Football on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Ryan Herrings. Thank you so much. A bunch of content coming up this week. We will talk later on Wisconsin.